What do you consider the biggest threat to humanity? Lord Underbite said, short-sightedness and selfishness. Most people can't contemplate more than a decade or so in the future, let alone several generations past their own lives. I think this is part of the reason why religions first came to be, as a way to encourage a lifestyle that made sure you left the world in a better place, had a positive impact on your community and future generations. Human selfishness and ego has always been an issue. The only difference is that now there's so many of us and we're so advanced and interconnected that our selfishness is putting the future of all civilizations at risk. Newstargerl said, I agree and would like to add that we each have to take part in making better communities. Stop buying things we do not need, reduce, reuse and recycle, look after each other as best we can, otherwise expect more of the same. Themadumchunk said, I noticed something the other day. I care about people, I don't want anyone to suffer, but I don't really think about caring about something until I actually see something that needs to be changed and cared about. I started wondering, if we cared before we noticed we needed to care, maybe we'd be better off. Like, instead of being complacent until we see something that is wrong, if we chose to actively care all the time, maybe we would notice more things and could prevent them. IDK. Just random thoughts that enter my mind. Goobiglobule said, unfortunately this attitude is generally fleeting and exists mostly during these personal thought experiments. The second your life circumstances demand your attention again, you'll sideline these ideas until the next time you find yourself thinking what if. Rinse and repeat. Edit. I'm not suggesting that it's impossible to live by these convictions to some extent, and many amazing people certainly find a way to do it, but the reality is that apathy is the MO for the majority of people simply because we don't have the mental or physical bandwidth to do anything other than tend to our own needs. Malish said, the Birmingham Bear. We need to fundamentally reevaluate what constitutes an acceptable quality of life. If people can't live without $5 trillion shirts made on the other side of the planet, N99C avocado in Michigan in March, then we're not gonna fix this. The we is the root of the problem. Humanity has created, by degrees, a gordian knot of incentives that no one person or even country has the ability to cut through. It's no one individual or country. It is a system. No one governs this system. It is governed by webs of incentives acting across individuals, nations, and corporations which reward and have normalized the very actions that will accelerate the process of climate destruction. Every single person's standard of living in developed nations is built on the status quo that is ruining the planet. Elected leaders don't want to upset the status quo for fear of being ousted by the people. The people are either brainwashed by corporations into believing there is no problem, or otherwise pissed at corporations but relatively helpless to do anything about it. Malish said, no one leader or corporation is going to do the selfless thing. It's a tragedy of the commons situation. They all take advantage of the situation because everyone else is. Every country worries that if they reduce emissions, they have no guarantee that any other country will. No one country will make a difference alone, and there's no guarantee that another country won't simply increase their emissions and gain an economic or military advantage over their rival. Every world leader and corporate executive and billionaire knows, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that climate change is real, and that we are causing it. They know. But everyone is paralyzed by the tragedy of the commons. The major corporations and countries of the world are paralyzed by one another, and by their own populations who are addicted to a way of life that is not sustainable. Any individual who is 30 years old now, living in a developed nation, could conceivably live a relatively normal life from now until death. Climate change will continue to accelerate, and billions will suffer and die, but they will be able to live relatively comfortable lives. We won't start to see the really horrific shit until maybe 2050, so they'll be 60 before the truly apocalyptic stuff, like global inescapable heat waves start. And maybe by the time, we'll have underground cities that people will have adjusted to, where they can live with family and friends in some sort of ordinary life. Not their ideal future, but a future. Malish said, this is the calculation they're all running in their minds. Why should I forsake a normal life, they ask themselves, and live in a hut in the woods, when doing so won't make a difference, and will only deprive me of a chance at a normal life, especially when I wasn't even responsible for this mess in the first place. Why should I stop traveling and spending and forsake the pleasures of the earth as it is now, especially given the likelihood that each year that passes it will be less habitable, less paradisical as it is now? Across every developed nation, people are running this calculus through their minds, even those who accept climate change as real and truly want to do something, but have given into a sense of helplessness and inability to effect change and surrendered to a sense of inevitability of the coming climate devastation. This attitude across peoples will make it much more difficult for any politicians who are calling for widespread sacrifice of commercial goods and progress in descaling emission-causing industries and potentially temporarily or permanently displacing the labor forces there. Because if you've already accepted the inevitability of climate change, and if your mind is already accepting the levels of survival you're willing to accept in that inevitable future, why would you sacrifice your best years now for the ambitions of politicians whose plans no one even has any confidence will affect change anyway? Malish said. That's the other irony. The more real climate change becomes gradually, the less willing people will be to sacrifice their last chances at a normal, comfortable life. Not just for themselves, but for their family, for their understanding of the world and their place in it. That's the issue of our current situation. Consensus appears impossible. Every individual is doing what is best for themselves, even knowing that it is a detriment to the world, because in isolation, their bad thing doesn't make a difference. So they do the bad thing, and everyone does the bad thing, and as the population keeps expanding, that calculation per individual doesn't change, but the damage of the aggregate continually increases. It will take wide-scale, planetary devastation on the magnitude of COVID but of longer duration to actually produce enough unified consensus to take action. But by the time we reach that point in earnest, it will be too late to do anything but endure the climate apocalypse for the next 50,000 years. The biggest problem with climate change is that it will not just suddenly become devastating immediately, like if we discovered a world-ending comet a week away from striking Earth. If climate change did present this sort of immediate, dramatic, cohesive threat, that would actually be beneficial for us. Because the human race is, Malish said, actually fairly good at organizing quickly and uniformly around an immediate, emergent, unified threat. But the reality is, things will get a little worse each year, little by little, in increments that will allow everyone to adjust to the new normal year after year, in isolation. The mass displacement of human bodies by the billions as third world countries collapse under climate devastation will be met with increased hostility by developed nations, and will increase the clout and power of myopic, fascist regimes that will exploit the situation for power, which will undeniably hamstring any action on climate change in inverse correlation to the level of consequences from climate change. In other words, the worse climate change gets, the more the world will react in ways further preventing us from taking actions to mitigate climate change. So I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to continue to act as though I'm wrong, and promote awareness, and donate to climate groups, and boycott polluters. But this is a very bad situation with no clear or easy way out. Link to full comment with edits. Quick edit. I wish this was mine, but it's another user whose name is the Birmingham Bear. He wrote this beautiful piece which I linked above. Sorry about any confusion. I wish I could write this good. Jack said. Part of it is because human-caused environmental change has been going on for longer than the conversation often acknowledges. In the US, a lot of it started in the years leading up to the Homestead Act, in the years preceding and following the Civil War, when people in the Midwestern region were cutting down vast amounts of lumber. This changed how the land received and retained heat, leading to the devastating fires in Chicago and nearby areas. Once the Homestead Act was instated, farmers cleared out the land even more when harvesting their, usually, wheat crops, disrupting the insect ecosystem and loosening the topsoil. This caused the Dust Bowl disaster in the 1930s and fed further into human-led climate change. It has become popular to blame it on modern industry, but in the US it really started in the mid-1800s when the government used poor farmers to clear and settle the land, even though scientists at the time advised against it. Haunted but said, the thing I notice is people not connecting the dots to the consequences. Oh no, it will be hotter. Oh no, it will be more of a desert where I live. Oh no, the seas will rise and coastal cities will be a little wetter. They don't realize that places our food comes from might stop being able to produce it. That prices go up and some cities may starve. Mass migration and violence and crime would ensue as people would literally be fighting for their survival. I believe Republican leadership, the evil ones, not the dumb ones, believe in climate change, and their policy response to it is a southern border wall. Smockums said. Full oceanic collapse is projected to be in 2048. That shit is a lot more serious and more rapidly approaching than most people think. Edit. For everyone becoming militant and blowing me up with rude conspiracy comments. I was referring mainly to a 2006 article from National Geographic https://www.google.com/amp/s/api.nationalgeographic.com/amp/animals/article/seafood-biodiversity. Since the National Geographic source I was referring is quite dated. Other Redditors in the comments have referred me to share this source directly from the IPCC for more up-to-date information on the current state of global climate oceanic assessments. https://www.ipcc.ch/report/AR6/WG1/#SPM. Thanks to our fine Reddit community and some of our not-so-fine community, I've been enlightened to more recent studies that show more up-to-date information than the 2006 Nat Geo article in the Seaspiracy Netflix documentary. This article highlights the 2006 study and the discrepancies of the Netflix doc. https://www.science-alert.com/no-the-oceans-will-not-be-empty-off-by-2048. Just a bit, I said. Don't eat fish. The fishing industry is responsible for 10% of plastic pollution in the oceans. They are responsible for overfishing 90% of fish stocks globally. They have caused more extinctions than any other human disturbance. They are also destroying thousands of years old pristine ecosystems such as deep-sea reefs that will not recover. Also, people can buy shit tuna in a can, and crap fish that has been battered beyond recognition and sold under a new name to sound special. Edit. The 90% stat, edited from 96%, refers to the percentage of global fish stocks that are overexploited or depleted, meaning that only 10% of global fish stocks are managed sustainably. Also going to take this opportunity to plug the organization Sea Around Us. They have been documenting commercial fishing and the collapse of global fish stocks, including fishing that the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, doesn't report. They do incredible, if not mildly depressing and terrifying work. Just a bit, I said. Edit 2 to address some common questions. Comments. I am not well informed on fish farming. If someone else is, please feel free to link some sources and information regarding their sustainability. I said don't eat fish because it's the easiest and most effective way to reduce the impact of overfishing. I personally still eat freshly caught fish from friends and family as I know they only catch a few fish at most. Sorry guys, no, you wish you were hauling in an esky full every time, and do so rarely and within regulations. If you can be sure you're eating fish that is sustainably caught or harvested, then by all means. This thread is about the collapse of aquatic ecosystems. Derailing it to say don't eat red meat isn't in theme with the point of the comment. Jedify said. That is second and third trophic level. The biggest danger is losing the base of the food chain. Photosynthetic microorganisms, plankton, etc. The real problem is half of the coral in the Great Barrier Reef has died in the past 3-4 years. Not just bleached, dead, due to heat stress. The acidic ocean also dissolves the shells of corals, diatoms, and a wide variety of other shell-producing organisms as they make them. We have measured a 50% decline in the amount of ocean algae around the world over the past century. It's a foundation of the ocean's ecosystems, and BTW, it made a majority of the oxygen you're breathing now. Toxic Optimism said. My dad told our family we had money trouble our whole lives, so when he and my stepmother's illnesses turned terminal, imagine my surprise when I found the hundreds of thousands he had saved for retirement. He died at 65, she died 4 months later just shy of 58. While I'm glad we had the funds to take care of them and my brother and I are now in a much better place financially because of our inheritance, some things actually would have been easier if they had been as broke as my father said they were. Neither of them got to enjoy retirement and the last half a decade was fucking miserable for both of them. I wish we had taken even $10K for a big family vacation before they both got so sick. So yeah. Try to do both, but I'm definitely in the enjoy it now camp. Gracie 1972 said. My mom died at 54 from cancer. Very loving and never favored any child over the other. but stayed in a loveless and verbally abusive marriage with my dad. At one point when it was in remission and Dr. said to avoid stress, my dad kept being same asshole and my brother wrote him a letter asking him to treat my mom better. My dad stopped talking to him and wouldn't let him and his son come over. My mom started looking for apartments. But surprise. Her cancer came back. 6 months to live. My whole family got together and acted like nothing had happened. My dad was sweet and loving for those last 6 months and my mom was so happy. I am 49 and have had some tough years with health and marriage. But I cut people out of my life that don't treat me well. I have had so much happiness in my life and would not be that upset if I die young like my mom. I cut my dad out of my life because of repressed memories of sexual abuse from when I was 5. Which caused a decade of major mental health problems I had. My brother and sister are team dad and don't talk to me anymore. I've never been better mentally and emotionally since then. XX Heretic 420XX said. Everything seems to be turning into crabs with carcination. Maybe the crab people will have a better time with the whole industrial society thing than we did. Gonna be hard for them since we've used most of the oil and stuff, but we might all die from climate disasters before the oil is all gone, so good for crab people. Good luck guys. Bataya OS said. Ocean ecosystems collapsing. The rate of which the populations of fish have decreased are alarming. With common fish like tuna decreasing by 97% in the past few decades, due to overfishing. Coral reefs dying, fish getting extinct, it's all because of us and it'll come back to haunt us, and it already is? The oceans contain 85% of all life on Earth, and yet we let these big companies throw one garbage truck full of trash into them every single minute. I imagine the oceans will be completely dead by 2070 or before, if it continues the way it is. Zambini said. On fire because humans set them on fire to clear land for farming. It's important to clarify that they didn't just spontaneously combust. It's beef and soy farmers in Brazil, for example, who are setting these fires. There was an article in a popular news company recently that had the same headline, but the cause of the fires wasn't until the 3rd or 4th paragraph, and emo that needed to be in the headline instead of masking and protecting the farmers and government allowing them to do so. Fox for 6 said. I really find it interesting how we always talk about save the rainforest, and yes, we do need to do that, but we never talk about our oceans as saving them. The oceans affect the environment more than rainforest, and yet it seems like what we care about is save the turtles, don't use straws, when in reality that has very little impact. Straws, versus all the other things we do to our oceans. I feel like the whole Save the Trees campaign backfired. All it did was allow companies to package things in plastic instead of paper products, in which plastic literally kills ocean life, whereas sure, cutting down trees does, but not near to the effect as plastic and paper is biodegradable. I know cost is also a reason why companies use plastic versus paper as well. Sailing Bacterium said. I got my PhD studying infectious bacteria and used to develop new antibiotics and biopharma. It's really hard, and most pharma companies completely shut down their bacteriology, and many, virology as well, departments over the last 5 to 10 years because there's no money in it. Eventually even things like minor surgery will be life-threatening due to infection. Jackson 71 said. My favorite Edward Bernays quote. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which your democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. Edward Bernays, Propaganda. Lacka Sandhills said. Climate change. We're going to have massive problems in my life. I dread to think what kind of world my kids will be living in when they are grown up. Edit. Lots are asking why I would have kids. Rather than respond to each of them, I'll answer you all here. Our kids weren't born yesterday. We decided to have kids about 6-7 years ago. Back then, Donald Trump was a reality TV host and businessman. The U.S. might flip between Democrat and Republican, but both were fairly centrist, by USA standards. Jair Bolsonaro was climbing his way up to power and I've never heard a name. He's now burning more rainforest than anyone ever before. Boris Johnson was the clown mayor of London and there was no way he'd get near actual power. The EU referendum was on the way, but there was no way the UK would vote leave. Laka Sandhills said. The latest IPCC report was that some warming would happen, but if we all took notice now we could limit warming to around 1.5 degrees. Eco-diesels were a thing. I bought one based on the lower carbon emissions. Seriously, fuck you VW and any other car manufacturers who have done similar things. Everyone should watch the Dirty Money episode about the emissions scandal. It's on Netflix. The world isn't angry enough about this. Offshore wind had become cheaper per kWh than nuclear. We were on the cusp of a green energy revolution. The world really has gone to shit in the last few years. Janice Graydon said. You're really onto something and it got me thinking. I guess you could say that the bigger problem is that the tools propagandists have today are literally orders of magnitude more effective than any time in history. They can profile and deliver tailored messages specifically to any group they want. Someone else said geopolitics, but PSYOPs is the new battlefield and that's nothing more than state-sponsored propaganda campaigns to destabilize other nations. And nothing they've developed seems to be more powerful than the tools that corporations are also leveraging against us. Propagandists have always existed and they've always sought to push short-sighted divisive mindsets, so while they're a problem they've never had this kind of ability to push humanity over the brink. World War II and subsequent Cold War certainly brought us close and we've had the capacity to annihilate ourselves, but I don't think it could effectively be argued that we ever had a popular, overwhelming desire to walk off that cliff. Nuclear war was always seen as the absolute last resort, something to be feared and actively defended against, never business as usual. Janice Graydon said. But we have created apparatuses that allow those kinds of interests to affect a significant enough popular opinion that there isn't even a problem. Worse, these tools are such a force multiplier that only 12 people are responsible for a significant majority of vaccine misinformation online. https://www.npr.org/disinformation-dozen-test-ability-to-kirby-vaccine-hoaxes. It only takes a dozen individuals to drag on a global pandemic for arguably a whole additional year and counting. If that's all it takes to shape opinion on a cataclysmic human disaster, it contextualizes just how much power to warp people's realities that intelligence agencies and multi-billion-dollar corporations wield. Imnovergen said. Oil and our dependence on the stuff. We're in a position where we can spot the issues with what we are doing wrong both as an individual and as a society. However, due to how the economy and infrastructure works and how much power the industries have over us, we're unable to fix set issues. We know oil is running out, we know it's destroying our environment, yet there is very little we can do against it because it is economically disadvantageous for us not to drive or try to boycott said oil companies. Yes, we are getting better but it's at a snail's pace. Every day we're closer to the point of no return and it feels like we're sitting on our hands. And then there's the whole army of brain-dead idiots that believe shit like COVID isn't real or the earth is flat and will go out of their way to damage any attempts to fix the problem just so they can feel validated. Mark my words, these brain-dead morons will be there for the oil crisis when it happens. Binary Time Lord said. Well, when you really get down to the details, it's really hard to kill humanity entirely right now. Even with all our nukes, most of the southern hemisphere would be left untouched. Wouldn't be a great time for the species, but we'd get through it all right. Scientists say they've most likely detected all the dinosaur-tier asteroids, so that's unlikely, but if one does hit, we were screwed outright. All the way down to the European country killers, they say the vast majority have been detected, so chances are an asteroid impact won't be species-ending either, since there are no asteroids big enough that we don't know about. In terms of ecological collapse, we have centuries to find technological replacements for the functions of nature, and we're already making progress on that stuff now. We have GMO farm plants that can survive harsher conditions and are more efficient. We can grow meat in labs. And we can probably bioengineer superplankton to replace a dying ocean plankton population for oxygen and fishing. Gamma-ray bursts are a candidate, but recent reports suggest they may not be quite as dangerous as we originally thought they'd be. And they'd need to be aimed directly at us from a burst within our own galaxy, which we can measure whether a star is likely to go supernova and what kind of explosion it will go. There are no candidates in our galaxy for sniping us with a GRB. Binary Time Lord said, there could be a rogue planet in the interstellar space that enters our solar system and throws off our orbit. This is hard to disprove because it's just so dark out there, and if it is true, there's very little we could do to stop it. If Earth's orbit is changed too much, no amount of genetic modification would save our crops. Humanity is in a really tough spot, but there is potential to survive depending on how bad it is. This is, of course, super unlikely. And then the thing I think is the biggest threat to our species? Aliens. All the other ideas are an event happening that really doesn't intend to kill humans. It'll happen and then give us the opportunity to survive and come back. Or in the case of climate change, it'll happen so slowly that it'd be hard not to adapt using technology and survive. Aliens are different. If they want us dead, they can do it intelligently. And if that happens, we're doomed. They can hurl asteroids at us that otherwise weren't a threat, decapitating all of society, and just destroy any bunker that happened to survive the impact using the myriad of other weapons they have. There's no escape. Mystical Fruit said, climate disaster. We are past a point of no return at this point, and everybody is blissfully going along, not realizing how real it's about to become. Our children and grandchildren are going to live in a harsher and far less verdant world. In our lifetimes, and definitely in theirs, billions of people are going to starve. Wars are going to be fought over meager resources. If we were to entirely cut our carbon emissions right now, we are still on a 30-year glide path of rising temps. But since we won't, we will slide farther down up the scale of consequences. We will get to watch Florida become an archipelago. Boston and many cities on the east and western coastlines of the US are going to become something like Venice. Places like Venice are going to become dive destinations. Mystical Fruit said, I know that tea came off as gloomy. I'm actually an optimist. The next 20+ years are going to be messy and ugly, but we will get through this. We are a very adaptable species and will adapt. We will finally put money into fusion. We will start carbon sequestration. Frankly, the dipshits who don't believe in climate change are simply going to age out, so people who care about these problems will get their hands on the levers of power. Frankly, if we really got going on fusion, with the saboteur process, we could have our cake and eat it too. Animal Club said, there are no scenarios where we go extinction or even large parts of the world starve. Even the implausible RCP 8.5 we grow food. Granted, it's not a world I want to live in. David Wallace Wells, who wrote The Hook Uninhabitable Earth, even acknowledged the dystopian scenarios are no longer on the horizon. It's going to be tough, really tough. But if you've been keeping up, in the early 2000s we were on track for 4-6C without alternatives. We are now on track for 2.5 to 3C with technology improving every year. We're on the cusp of carbon taxes, carbon tariffs, and hopefully an arms race of producing renewables. Meat alternatives will soon replace cows, which are primarily responsible for deforestation. Carbon-neutral steel and concrete as a carbon sink are also possible soon. Electric scooters are going to explode in popularity, and electric cars are already superior to gas cars in every way except refueling, which is good for road trips, and that's about it. Red Squirrel FTW said, yeah, honestly, I'm getting more and more worried things are going to get very bad. Recently bought 40 acres as my goal is to live off-grid, but that won't save me from the climate getting worse, and it won't save me from the wars and terrible government policies that we are going to eventually see. For example, I can totally see the government forcing people to give up land for refugees, etc. I live in a low population area and absolutely hate the idea of living in a high population area, but with the climate it will push a lot of population here and cause tons of development even near on my off-grid property, basically forcing me out. Things are going to get ugly. Basically, I'll be trying to live a zero-emission life, and that could potentially be taken away from me, because the world refuses to lower emissions.